Hello, welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin. So, yesterday I decided as soon as I woke up, I was going to make the entire day so intentional. I had read a post by my good friend Anik, and she was talking about how she wants to live life with intention and whatever is coming, whether it be like grief or sadness or joy, like just to like hold space for it and just to like mingle with it. And it's very beautifully written. And, you know, it's awesome to be inspired by like such a good friend of mine. And I thought, you know, I think I can do that a little bit more, a little bit better. I have found myself just, you know, there's good reasons why, but we all have good reasons for the shitty things that we do. As far as multitasking, all the time, constantly. And when you multitask all the time, your brain doesn't like it, and it creates a lot of like tension. It creates a lot of stress. And what I had found was happening is like, okay, like I'm overachiever. I'm going to get done like super quick. And I'd find myself like multitasking, do multiple things at once. And there is a huge part of me that thinks that like, okay, I'm winning if I'm doing that. Like I'm making the most of my time. And I think a lot of people are conditioned that way, you know, that if you're multitasking, like you're getting shit done, you're being productive, right? And in a lot of jobs, it's expected to like do multiple things at once. The thing is if you do that at work, then a lot of times it seeps into the rest of your life. And then before you know it, like you're juggling so many things at once. And when you go to put all those things away, your brain, it's like having all these like windows open of your browser, and it starts to like crash and freeze. And I started noticing that was happening to me. Just like my memory recall hadn't been its greatest. And another thing too is that, you know, it's like when you're multitasking, you're not fully engaged and present in the moment. Being fully engaged in the moment is very powerful. When I coach people, I am super present. Like I'm so present with people that I can feel what they're feeling. And then I sort of start to get access to their subconscious stuff. And that might be like hard to understand or believe. Like, what are you, a witch? Yes. Maybe a yoga witch. But it's more just like anyone has that ability. I practice it, and coaching space, yoga space, meditation space is very sacred for me. So I try to make it as present as I can, and I'm only doing one thing. Now, the rest of my life, I wasn't applying those same lessons, you know, and the more that I take like meditation retreats and like where I clear out and varagyam, have a remembrance of who I am without all the stuff, right? So non-attachment to all the shit, and then remembering who I am, then I can pull myself back into a present moment. I can remember who I am, and I can access those, they call yoga superpowers or siddhis, which you can read all about in Vibhuti Pada, which is in the Yoga Sutras. It's the third book. It talks all about the yoga superpowers, and how you can acquire them, which I don't know if it's like, you know, getting older and just becoming or reading more fantasy novels and being more fascinated by like the magical aspect of yoga. But I think I've been practicing it for so long. I'm just practicing it for so long that it becomes of interest, it becomes available, and so then I start to use it. But you have to be present, like you have to be practicing yoga to access these superpowers. But beyond that, even if you're like, okay, whatever, you just got weird. Okay. I think a lot of my listeners like my weird. But being intentional and being mindful and being present is like a huge detox for your nervous system. And it's a huge detox for your brain. Whatever activity you engage in, if you choose in that moment, like I did when I woke up, I said, you know what? The whole day, I'm going to be very intentional and present, from eating to walking down the street to, you know, after yoga yesterday, I walked on the beach and I was like taking deep breaths, and I guess I had a lot of like compartmentalized or just compounded stress and feelings come up, because yesterday was like, it was satisfying because I was with myself the whole time, which proves that it's the resistance that we fear, and that's the worst part, rather than the emotions itself, because it wasn't that bad. It was just, I had to pay attention. And so it was work, but it wasn't like the type of work where you're like, God, like, when is this going to be over? It was like, okay, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling lonely. Like, this is coming up. And then, just asking questions like, well, where's this coming from? Like, gently, not like analytically, like, I must figure this out. Like, okay, I'm curious about this. That definitely has a different vibe than like sinking your claws into it and be like, tell me the answers. So the results of being so present yesterday was, I felt so much more grounded when I was teaching this morning. I slept like a dream. Like, I mean, it was one of those sleeps where like your head hits the pillow and you're out, and then you're like, wake up, and like, the alarm's going off, and you're like, wow, I slept like a solid 8.5 hours. Like, that's fantastic. Which usually my sleep's pretty good, but like, it was very, very peaceful. And I didn't dream a lot. I usually actually dream, and I think it's neat because I can recall my dreams. Like, any night when I sleep, like when I wake up the next day, I can recall like 3 or 4 dreams. And a lot of times it's, it's like a mishmash of different things. Like, I had a dream that like there was this like cat lizard animal, and my mom was like, oh yeah, you need to behead the cat. And I was like, but Mom, why? Shit like that. And then I needed to do like a controlled burn of my backyard. And I'm like, okay, yeah. Probably lots of, just like examples of what's happening in my life, and maybe metaphorical, but I won't go into that because that's not what this podcast is about. So it takes courage to slow down and look at your life and look at the things that maybe you've gotten into bad habits about. Nobody's perfect. Certainly I'm not. You might not be perfect too. Just a guess. But it does take courage to slow down and look at your life and like kind of like admit to yourself, like, I could probably do better. I could probably set more intention, and like setting the intention and sticking to it, So I noticed when I had an impulse to like go online and like, I wonder what everybody else is up to. And like, nope. Like, I noticed it. And by refraining from the impulse, I noticed what is underneath that. Probably you are trying to avoid feeling a feeling. And I certainly was. I was trying to avoid loneliness and sadness. Both of these things came up. A little bit of grief. I think about my mother's death last year. So it's worth it. I would say set an intention if you're interested in doing this. And I would say if you're interested in mindfulness, like, I've been building up to this like full day mindfulness by, again, yogaing, meditating, and I've recently started mindful eating. So I have these little pockets of time that I've made very mindful and intentional, like to the best of my ability. Not every day's perfect, right? And there's certainly days where I want to sit in front of the TV and like just like munch mindlessly. But like, I notice the impulse, and like 90% of the time I don't do that anymore, which is like, I think, a win, because again, nobody's perfect. But I've been strategically filling in the space of my life with mindfulness. And so by taking a whole day to be mindful, it really cleared me out. It felt like a fucking vacation from my brain, if I'm perfectly honest. So I'm going to cut it there just because I'm trying to make these podcasts a little bit shorter, under 10 minutes. So I hope that you gain something from this podcast. I highly recommend trying mindfulness in your life and maybe starting it in little pockets and then maybe trying to do it throughout your day. It's worthwhile, setting little bells to remind yourself to come back present, just in case you go off into la la land. Last thing is I have 4 more spots in my coaching program, January 20th to the 27th. If you're interested in it, reach out to me, Erin at erincoach.com. It'll change your life. Talk to me. I'll talk you into it. All right. Thank you so much, and namaste.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the podcast and if it's helping you, please consider writing a review. You can go to iTunes or Google Play, go into the search bar and type in Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching, scroll down, and you can leave a review. This helps other people to find me as well as bumps us up in the search ratings. Also, this podcast is sponsor-free, so that means we don't receive anything for doing it. If you feel so inclined and this podcast is helping to support you and you want to return the favor and help to support any production costs of the podcast, feel free to give a donation to a Venmo link, Thrive Yoga Fit, or PayPal, Erin@erincoach.com. If you don't have the means, don't worry about it. We're not going anywhere. You're all good. But if you would like to give back, you can give back in those ways. Last thing, we have a coaching certification coming up, and it's 7 days of an intensive work, followed by a 3-month mentorship. You will not find another teacher that's more passionate and dedicated than I am to my students and their learning. And not just their learning, but the application and how they show up in their life. If you've been listening to this podcast and it's had a huge impact on your life, just imagine what it would be like to spend 7 intensive days with me and then a 3-month mentorship. You can check that out at thriveyogafit.com/coach-certification. Again, thriveyogafit.com/coach-certification. Thank you so much. Namaste.